All right. So one of the things that I do all the time is go for like a really systematic review of what AI does for me. No, realize I didn't say a systematic review of every line of code. Let's just be let's just be really honest here. Let's just be really real here, right? No one, and I don't care what anybody says, no one is reviewing every line of code that your AI wrote. That's just not going to happen. People say that they do, they don't. Let's just get that out of the way, right? But what's actually really important is that you're going to want to understand the core components of what your AI did. You're going to want to understand whether your AI followed the directions that you gave it. And I'm going to get into that a little bit later on as we kind of walk through. You kind of see what I mean by the directions because I'm very detailed in that. I am not a YOLO developer. I am not a vibe coder, right? I like to say what I do is software composing, right? And software composing has some rules, it has some approaches, right? I do agentic coding. I'm not vibe coding. Vibe coding is a different animal. Vibe coding is synonymous with YOLO. I don't do YOLO, right? What we build, what I build, and what I'm hoping that you're building is far too important for you to leave it up to chance. And we know that LLMs are highly probabilistic. They're going to do whatever that they want. You want to go design this thing out and say, do what I want. So my entire review process, which is what I'm going to go through here on this live stream, is about how do you kind of go through ensuring that the AI did exactly what you told it to do. And the second thing that's also super important is how do you ensure that you understand exactly all the nitty gritty and especially the more important parts of what you've just developed, right? So, for example, what we're going to walk through here is me going through building out a durable agentic runtime, and I'm going to explain what that means as I kind of go along in more detail. You'll kind of pick up on that. But a durable agentic runtime, it's basically I'm building a runtime, right? Not a harness. I'm building something bigger than that. I'm building a runtime, right? Where my agents can exist. They can speak to each other across different machines, across different networks, whether it's going to be local, whether it's going to be in the cloud. They can share resources, right? They can share capabilities. Agents can self-discover, and to do so, I'm building actually my first application on top of it simultaneously. And that first application is an AI sales development rep, an AI SDR. The difference in my AI SDR than what's on the market right now is that my AI SDR is going to be goal oriented. So if you use Claude Code, for example, you know the slash goal command, right? Hey, thanks, Tommy. Hey, it's my first time going live, man. I tried yesterday. It was a disaster. I just moved into a new house. My internet was crap. I went out last night. I set up a mesh network in my home, and hopefully this is better, man. So thanks for joining. Hey, for sure, Tommy. Send me the information, man. I would love to join hackathons, man. So send me any info. You can drop it in there as well for anybody else following the live. Man, this is all about an ecosystem, right? I like to help everyone. So if you want to drop your link here in my life, do so. If anybody else jumps on, they can actually check it out. Right. Yeah, man, I'm gonna try to stay up consistent. Right. So basically, and then yeah, if anything is going wrong with the stream, like the audio is off or the internet signal is off, please let me know because I would have noticed my first time live. I'm not an expert in this at any means, right? So again, thanks for jumping on, man. So basically, going back to what I was saying on the AI SDR that I'm building, the AI SDR is going to sit on top of the runtime. And one of the cool things about, yep, thanks, man. So one of the cool things that's about my durable agentic runtime is that all the things that you hear like nightmares of about agents doing the same thing twice, like for example, connecting to Stripe and billing someone twice or three times, all that is handled automatically by my agentic runtime. So any solution sitting on top of that, do not have to worry about that. Part of the agentic runtime is things such as my reasoning agents do not talk directly to tooling. So, for example, a reasoning agent, if it gets attacked by a prompt injection, it doesn't matter. My blast radiuses are restricted. They don't talk directly, for example, to my emailing agent, right? Because they go through policy agents and resource agents, short-term tokens. So this stream is not about the details of that. what this stream is about. Hey, how do I actually review code? What I wanted to actually just show you though, before I dove into this, is because what I'm building is super complicated, right? Like if I get any of this wrong, there's security nightmares, right? Not only security nightmares, right, is going to actually cause um, a lot of economical issues, right? Because tokens are expensive and all that kind of stuff, and you'll understand what that means as I go deeper on, because my durable agentic runtime, it tracks spend. You can set budget on jobs and goals, so you can say, hey, the goal is to convert this lead into a customer who's booked a meeting, and I only want to spend 50 cents on this. And it will actually track all that, and it will shut down once it hits the limit, the 50 cents, right? So again, that's going to be part of the durable agentic runtime, right? And then any agent that I sit on top of it, any solution, will be able to have access to that via an SDK and all that kind of stuff. So with that being said, I am developing that durable agentic runtime side by side to the AI SDR, right? So what I do is, obviously there's a lot of coding to get that done. So usually my coding is done at night, overnight, by my agents and my sub agents. And I give them very clear directions, and I do that through architectural decision records, ADRs, which I'm going to show. So if you look at my screen, you see my ADRs on the left hand side. And here I'm in the durable agentic runtime repo, but there's a second repo, which is my AI SDR repo, which is not on the screen right now. But the durable agentic runtime repo, as you can see, there's 27 ADRs that actually drive that, right? And I'll show you kind of like what an ADR looks like. So let me show one of my favorite ones. Let's look at agent to agent peer calls. Right, look at this, agent to agent peer calls. Right, so you can see, right, agent to agent peer calls, scope to trusted runtimes over peer-to-peer HMAC, right? So basically what this says is that my AI agents are going to be able to talk to different AI agents on different networks, on different runtimes. So how it works is that you'll be able to install the runtime on your local network or on the cloud, right? But your own VPC, your own account in AWS. I can have mine. Gary can have his. Gary can have agents that have specific reasoning skills, and Gary might have resources on his computers like a GPU. You might not have a GPU, but you want access to transcribe something. Your agent can talk to Gary's agent, and that's peer to peer. And then the sort of like the security mechanism, right, is going to be through HMAC. So basically, this ADR, it defines what that looks like. And you'll see what the ADR also does is that it then tells me what the other ADRs that are important to it is. So 5, 6, 7, 12, and 17. Session is isolated, which is a really good one. Durable execution primitives. I'm going to actually open that up because I wanted to see that. Put those bad boys side by side, right? And you can actually see, right, there's more, 7, 12, right? 12, 17 is self-hosted topology and ingression seams. The self-hosted topology defines if you're launching this locally, what that kind of looks like. So I'm going to actually open that one up to as well. Right, you can see what it is. And if I go into here, this one tells me what that's related to. It tells me that it tells me self-hosted is a first class target, meaning that I didn't add on the capability to have this entire durable agentic runtime. I didn't add on the ability for it to be launched locally after, right? From the beginning, the idea was we need to ensure that we can run this durable agentic runtime in regulated settings, right? Banking, finance, healthcare. So from the beginning, everything that's built for the durable agentic runtime, all it can run in local and in the cloud. And the way that we do that, right, is through adapters. So basically, the SDK sits and it sits on top of an adapter, and the agents themselves don't even know where things are running, whether it's going to be local or on cloud, because the adapter shows all of that. So actually, a company can even have their durable agentic runtime span across both local and cloud. They can go all local, they can go all cloud. And even better, they can start cloud, for example, and move it to local and nothing changes, or start local and move it to cloud. So all this stuff is kind of built in there. And the ADR, well, how ADR is kind of set up is that, as you can see, the ADR tells you the title, and the title is super important because if I'm an LLM and I'm coding, right, I'm able to read the title, and I can also create an index, right, that actually has the title and a short description. So when the LLM is coding, it knows what to bring into context. So I'm not using a ton of tokens. So all this is kind of like a play that I actually make. It tells me the status. Accepted ADR is going to be used by the LLM while it's coding. If it's not accepted, my LLM actually rejects it. All that's going to set up in my instructions. And then the related is cool because if an ADR is brought into memory by the LLM, it also knows which other ADRs it should also bring into as well, or at least reference. And then I have a supersedes and a supersedes by, and usually that's kind of blank, but every now and then, if I know that one ADR is supposed to be read before this particular ADR, I will set it up and say, hey, this supersedes this, right? Or superseded by. Superseded by means that, hey, go read the other ADR first before you read this. Supersedes mean that, hey, when you read this, be for sure to go read this other ADR, right? I don't use it that much, but it's set up to be done. You can see again how an ADR is set up. It has the context, right? It kind of gives you a story as to why we're doing something. It says, hey, two things were underframed, right? Which means that this ADR came to play because as we were sort of like designing the AI and I, we realized that, hey, we have an ADR in which is 009, right? Which has NATS and Postgres as local development pieces. We realized that it wasn't enough, right? And we also realized that the runtime only ever consumes envelopes. So envelopes is sort of like the data structure that we're using for agentic to agentic communication. That's our protocol. We realized that the runtime only consumes envelopes. Nothing in the build produces them from the outside world, right? So yeah, it can consume them. The agents can consume them, but what's sending them in? So then we realized that um, we need to handle better for external system, peer agents, and apps that push events into the durable runtime agent infrastructure. And it needs to work both for AWS and self-hosted targets. So there was no way for an external webhook or callback to become an envelope on the backbone, right? So the durable agentic runtime has a backbone. And all it's saying is that we were designing and we realized like, oh crap, we do not have a way for systems to actually send messaging. Like we could pull, but nothing was purely event driven where we had ears onto the system and it could listen, right? So basically you're talking webhooks and callbacks and stuff like that. So basically, the other thing in an ADR is that you'll then see, okay, cool, what is the decision that we made? We made a decision that self-hosted is a first-class deployment target, not just development. So what that meant was, while we were developing, we treated local infrastructure that we were actually doing, which is like for Docker containers and stuff like that. We were treating them as a dev environment before we pushed up to the cloud. And I went like, no, 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 no. This again, the LLM made that inference, right? I said, no, that is not true. Local infrastructure is not a development environment. Local infrastructure is a first class citizen of this entire design, which means that it's not dev, it's not staging, it's not prod. It means that someone could deploy this locally. So if I wanted dev, I would have, right, I would have a stack locally that's dev, a stack staging locally, a stack that's production locally, but it's not the fact that because it's local, it's dev. So once that realization was kind of kicked in, we realized that we needed an ADR to make that very, very clear. All right. So at the end of the day, what the ADRs do is that the ADR is going to capture all the decisions. So we make those decisions. Self-hosted is a first-class deployment target. Ingress is a seam that turns an inbound request into envelopes. So that's just fancy language to say that, hey, ingress is a portion of our design, and its only function, its core function, is to take whatever inbound request, and this is super important, whatever inbound request, and turn it into an envelope. And that's super important because it means by doing that, an external system does not need to know the structure and the shape of the envelopes on the durable agentic runtime backbone. It is the job of the DAR, though, to say, I know that Apollo, for example, is sending us a webhook, right, with some information. We know it's coming from Apollo. We're going to then convert it into an envelope. So, what that means is over time, we can add more functionality to the backbone by supporting more and more and more inbound, sort of like inbound communication, right? Which means that as I make this public, it means that the community will continue developing these seams that converts them into envelopes, right? And then it basically says number three that ingress has two faces. The tunnel is only for the internet edge, which means what that means is we can run this on a local network where one machine on a local network speaks to another machine on the local network because that's where the agents live. But we can also support where it's coming truly from an internet producer, like a SaaS webhook, a remote peer agent. Your buddy Gary is running his durable agentic runtime backbone and he wants to talk to yours. Well, that's internet producers. And then you have LAN internal producers, which is we are on the same network and we are already trusted. And then one of the things that we clearly wanted to say was that internet, like streaming chats, is one exception. We do not want to go through some of the things that we're talking about here if we're streaming chat. And the other thing that's really cool about an ADR is that you need to put your consequences. You say, okay, cool, I've made these decisions. I know these are the positives. I know this is the negatives, right? So for us, we're going to be using Cloudflare tunnels. We know that it terminates TLS at the Cloudflare edge, right? Um, which could be seen sort of like a security hazard, but we have another ADR that actually covers how we fix that. And it also means that ingress is a new public attack surface, right? Because if now we're opening it up to internet producers, that is a new public attack surface. Somebody can try to hack us through that interface, right? Because essentially what we're doing is that we're taking Cloudflare tunnels and we're saying, hey, the Cloudflare tunnels are open. But understand this, what makes us really good here is that we're not opening ports, right? We're communicating, we're opening our computers locally via a Cloudflare tunnel, which is super secure because we're using Cloudflare Zero Trust. But in addition to that, we're also saying that it must authenticate every request, right? And we're saying that HMAC right now is what we're going to start with. It is a flaw. It is the least security mechanism that we're going to use, right? It's not a ceiling. We're going to use things like replay windows, rate limiting, and a per provider scheme as we actually build this to its zenith, right? And we also know that the negative is that it's another component to deploy because now we need an HTTP service or Lambda plus API gateway on each target. The good news is that we've already built this already because these ADRs are old. Um, so in AWS, we have the Lambda and API gateway for local. We have a ingress HTTP service, which is super secure that ties into Cloudflare Zero Trust, right? And for the Cloudflare tunnel. So again, this ADR allowed us to build that. Now, and then the last thing that you want to do in an ADR is that you want to talk about the alternatives that you considered. So one of the things that we considered was pool-based ingress, right? So we're pulling instead of just receiving, and obviously we rejected that. The whole point of a durable agentic runtime is to create agents that are always on, that are always listening. So if we're pulling, that actually disrupts the pattern. It's a no-no. We want it to be event driven. So the one way to be event driven is to have ears that you can listen to, that someone can send information to. The other thing was to bake the ingress into every worker, right? So into every agent. So that was rejected, right? Because producing and consuming are different roles, and because they're different roles, they scale right at different speeds, and they have different sort of like exposure patterns. So, and it's important to us that our worker, aka our agents, must never be internet facing. Again, this is really good production level infrastructure. Production level infrastructure is that your agents, your AI agent, should never be internet facing. Someone should never be able to speak directly to your AI agent. There needs to be something between the outside, right, and your agents. This is just This is not just good security posturing. This is the only security posture that you should be taking, right? When you're talking about agentic tools and AI agents. And the last thing that was considered as an alternative is a provider specific ingress. So, for example, you'd have a Gmail receiver, right, and put it in the core. That was rejected because that violates a rule that I have on domain neutrality, right? So, provider mapping is the applications mapper, not layer one, which is the durable agentic runtime. That's just a very fancy way of saying that, look, if you want mapping at that level and you're going to build a solution on top of the durable agentic runtime, put that in there. We're not putting that into the core, right? So once you understand that those are the alternatives, you say, okay, cool. Well, the answer was, hey, we need to make self-hosting a first-class citizen, and we need to have an ingress service that takes information coming in and then structures it into our envelope. And one of the cool thing about that too, as I kind of go off of this, is that by doing so, external systems do not know what your envelope looks like, which is always a win from a security standpoint. So again, I want to show what an ADR looks like. And the point you have shown what an ADR looks like is to really drive home that you want to do a ton of design thoroughly before you build with agentic coding tools. Again, I wanted to really show that when I say that my AI agents are running multiple sub agents overnight and they're coding across multiple story acts and epics, do not confuse this to me saying that I YOLO develop. That's not YOLO developing. That is not vibe coding. This is software composition using agentic coding tools. This is agentic aided development. This is not vibe coding. And I have nothing against vibe coding. The problem that I have with vibe coding though is that it takes nothing. Well, I shouldn't say this. It takes a little bit, just a little bit of effort to move from vibe coding to proper agentic coding, and the value of it is 100-fold, right? So whenever I hear a story, whenever I hear people pushing vibe coding, I just get a visceral reaction to it because it's such a wrong thing to do, but also it is so easy to do the right thing. And to do the right thing is just to have some process. And part of that process is your ADRs, right? They are your ADRs. All right. So I have all these ADRs kind of lined up. So then I just want to kind of show you what that looks like before we jump into what then happens. And then we can actually go into like the crux of this stream, which is, okay, now that I have these ADRs, I'm going to tell my AI to, hey, do certain things. So I'm not going to go into that part, but let's just say, and I'll do this in the next video, but let's just say um, at this point I have my ADRs, then I create a roadmap, right? So I can take these ADRs, I can go to LLM and I can like, hey, based on these ADRs, here's what I want to accomplish by tomorrow. Put together a roadmap, right? Use an agile approach, right? Write me some stories using the narrative approach, right? Which is given this, then do this. Given this, right? I want to do this, blah blah blah, right? Write some acceptance criteria and all that kind of stuff. Then I'll do a separate stream on how to actually write proper stories. But let's just say I have a list of stories, aka a list of things that need to be done overnight, right? And they could be like 100 different things. I will then actually combine them logically into things that can actually sit on different branches. And I look at it as story arcs, like I'm writing a story. And I go like, oh, this part of the story is done. And then I will sequentially do them, right? Where one story arc builds upon the other story arc. But within each story arc, you maybe have like 20, 25 individual stories working. And then my AI will kind of know which ones are done simultaneously, right? To reduce the need to kind of like do merges and all that kind of stuff and fall into any issues. And which ones need to be done in a particular order. I leave it up to that. I go to bed, it's running, right? So I'm speaking this at a very high level. I can do a different stream when I show you how I set this up. But the main takeaway here is that I have ADRs, I have specification files, I have stories, right, that are clearly detailed, and then I'm gonna go to bed. it's 11 o'clock or whatever at night. I'm gonna go to bed. I know this is gonna take like around 6 hours to actually complete. Because the one thing I will point out is that there are tests in there as well, right? Whenever I write my stories in my acceptance criteria, there is a definitive call to test every feature, right? And to continue iterating until those features have been tested and completely accepted, right? So an acceptance criteria is in play where I have sub agents whose only job is to ensure that every feature has met its acceptance criteria, and we cannot move forward on an arc until we do this. So when I say this is like a 6 7 hour coding, um sort of like I'm saga for my AI agents, I mean it. I'm sleeping, right? This is going to be doing this. So when that happens, understand what happens. What is my job the next morning? My job the next morning is to ensure that the stuff gets built per my vision. One. The other thing that needs to be ensured is that I understand every decision that the AI had to take. Because remember, it's supposed to follow my ADRs. But understand that I'm not the man on the spot. I am not the one writing the code. So there could be architectural design decisions that we make that at that time, when it comes to implement it, the AI goes like, "Oh yeah, that was the wrong call. Oh, I that just doesn't work like this," and the AI then has to pivot. Now that's where again I will point this out. This is where again good ADRs come in play. When the AI pivots, because it has the ADRs, it looks at things like, hey, what were the alternatives that were already considered? So it might want to pivot into something else and say, hey, for example, um, I need to change the peer weight mechanism. It goes in and says, no, that was already rejected. And this is why Chris rejected it. So now the AI knows why I rejected things. It also knows why I accepted certain things. Now that certain thing that I accepted and I told it to build might not be the right move anymore at that time. So it needs to come up with an approach, but it then has guardrails, right? This is what this is. The alternatives considered and rejected are guardrails that gives the AI more context and it says, oh, I can do this. Because guess what? The AI is most likely going to use these, right, as the most likely thing it wants to pivot to. But it looks and goes, oh no, we can't pivot to that because Chris already rejected it. Here's why. And with each one gives it more context that kind of creates its box for it. It says, okay, cool, I can now come up with a solution in that box that Chris is most likely to like. Again, remember the context it also has is what I selected that it couldn't do at the time. So keep in mind, my job to come in the next morning is to review all of this, right? My job is to review all of this. My job is to come in here, understand the code, what was written, but also understand every pivot. My goal is to then take a quick look at the code sometimes and understand, is there things that it's doing from a coding standards perspective that it didn't that I wanted and it didn't do, right? Because guess what? This AI, these things say that they obey rules all the time, and sometimes they don't. Sometimes something simple as me saying in my coding standards, hey, do not put any inline SQL in my code. And it ends up doing inline SQL, right? And you go like, oh man, you missed that, right? It's stuff like that. So your job is to do a review. So you almost become like when you're doing agentic coding and like software composing and not vibe coding, you are the mixture between QA, architect, developer, all in one. Well, let's just be very clear here. This example I'm using, if I was to code this before agentic coding, this is like a 2 year project. I'm maybe gonna knock this out in 2 months, right? As a matter of fact, I'm like 3 weeks into this, and next week I'm rolling out the AI SDR on top of this for the first client. Well, the first two. Myself, I'm gonna be N of one, and then I have a client who's actually gonna be using this next week, right? So the first two clients, and that's been after 3 weeks. So this might sound tedious what I'm talking about, but let's just understand this, right? We're talking about going from a project that would take in 2 years, like one person, if I was one person doing this, 2 years, to One person doing this saying that I can get this done in 2 months. So just pause. Let's pause. 24 months versus 2 months. 1 to 12 ratio, right? 8%. 8 point what? 8.13, 8.33%, right? So that's roughly like a 92% output boost. Someone might say, well, I can just vibe code this and all. No, it won't work. You'll end up spending the same 2 years because everything will be wrong. I'm building a production level system that I can sell to companies that can run in regulated industries. And I'm telling you, I can build this in 2 months with this approach. So, with that being said, if my role is just to be very, very detailed in writing my ADRs, writing my process, and all that kind of stuff, and my job is to be very detailed in my review the next morning, that is a very small price to pay. No, doesn't mean that I have to make the review a long and tedious process. I can have AI help me with that too. And that's what I'm about to show you, right? But it also means I still have to do my job, right? So let me show you what that looks like. So basically, I have this prompt and I'm going to drop it here. I should be able to drop it in the chat. As a matter of fact, you know what I'm going to do? I am going to drop it. How can I do this? It's my first time on this chat. Trying to figure out who this. Actually, I'm going to drop it later on. I'm having problems on my chat. But what I'll do is I'll drop this prompt that I'm about to show you on my screen. Where did I put it? If not, I was gonna do it here again. Okay, let's just put it. Let's just drop it here. It's gonna be like review. Let's just drop it in here. There you go. This is it. This is the prompt. I'm gonna bring it over. It might be easier to read over here. All right. So this prompt, what it does is I run this every morning, like when I come in. So my agents have been coding overnight. And remember, I have multiple machines, right? I actually have 10 what's that called? RTX 3090s in my local lab. So overnight, I'm running 2 to 3 projects, right? So understand when I say to you, my job is to come in the morning and do this. This is not an understatement. So if I come in here, this is my prompt. It's called a feature by feature review protocol, right? So I say use this when a large body of AI, a direction says use this when a large body of AI built work is done and nothing has been merged yet. So the one thing I'll actually point out is when I leave my AI to code overnight, a very clear rule I have for it is you you cannot merge any code. I clearly tell it like you have this different story arcs and this epics, which I talked about, which I say I'll do another video about how I set this up. But the idea here is that every one of them are done on their own branch, right? My main is my protected resource, right? Because I know if a night goes off, night goes wrong, I don't even trip, right? I come in next morning. If I really don't like what I see in the review, I just kill the branch, right? I take the lessons learned and I go like, oh yes, this is what we did wrong. I kill the branch and I'll do it again tonight again, right? It's no big thing on my chest. I don't really care, right? So a really big deal is I'm not merging. I am not merging because I'm not gonna go through that stress of, hey man, this has been merged, and I have to go through, Git, and I have to look at diffs and I have to roll stuff. I'm not doing that. Losing a night is nothing in the grand scheme of things. The quality of what I build is the most important thing. And again, I took a different look at this. I'm not trying to build anything that could be done in 2 days. I build things that would have taken me someone 2 years, a year before, and I'm trying to build them in 2 to 3 months. As you can see from the durable agentic runtime and my AI SDR that's goal oriented, I am building things of consequence. So losing a day, it's not a big deal for me. And I'm also building like 4 or 5 things at a time. So hey, one night gets lost on one project, I learn from it. As a matter of fact, it updates my brain, right? To be like, oh Chris, this is what you do in the future. It also updates the brain for my other AIs because I make notes, I feed it into my systems, and then we just get better over time. And more, this happens less and less and less. This is an iterative process. So I do want to actually encourage everybody to think of this like this. When you are doing agentic driven coding, not vibe coding, you do want to have a repository of lessons learned, right? So as a matter of fact, one thing I do have is that I have a collection of ADRs, which is like just general best practice for me doing anything. So if I'm doing infrastructure as code projects, I have ADRs for that. If I'm doing projects for like React-based projects, I have ADRs for that. If I'm doing APIs, I have ADRs for that. If I'm doing Lambda-based right ADR stuff, I have Lambda-based projects, I have ADRs for that. The number one skill that you need to have to do agentic development or agent assisted development is organization. It's organization. That's the number one skill. The second skill is that it makes sense to learn different system principles and design principles in whatever that you're doing, right? So if I'm building event-based distributed systems, I am going to learn about patterns in that space, right? If I'm doing front-end development, I'm going to learn patterns in React. You don't have to sit down and learn the language, right? If you're not a developer, but you want to learn patterns, right? You want to learn frameworks. You want to learn the pros and cons. So you can have that conversation as to, hey, I'm going to do X, I'm going to do Y, and you can recognize things are wrong, and you can recognize when the right pattern is going to be used in the same place. This is what intelligence is going to be going forward. It's going to be understanding system design, understanding patterns, and applying them. Because I know you notice the AI is going to be wrong 80% of the time. It tells you to do something, and you have to steer it. Be like, hey, what about this? What about that? Right? Like, did you think about this? And you know what? Let me correct myself. It's not that the AI is wrong. It's because we don't give the AI enough context about what we're trying to do sometimes, and it doesn't know what it doesn't know. So the recommendations it makes are based on what it knows, what you've told it, what you've exposed it to. So sometimes, so when you learn different patterns and frameworks, you learn a better way to communicate the context in which the AI is working, and then it's going to be able to work at its optimal vision of itself. So just kind of remember that, right? So basically, that's the prompt. And then I jump in. I say, "Hey, you just completed a large body of work," and I'm not going to read this whole thing. It's on the screen. I'm gonna make it available to you. As a matter of fact, I do have a member area. I do have a member area on my on the Idea Innovation Factory. So I am the lead. I am the lead innovation officer and AI officer at the Idea and Innovation Factory. I will drop a link somewhere here soon to the free member area where you can actually go in here. You can actually download this prompt. It's actually already up here. If I can figure out how to do a chat, send a message in the chat. Which was just here, and I don't know why it's gone away. But let's see. I'll be able to make that available here for anyone who actually wants to go ahead and jump in and then grab that. Right. So I'm not going to read through it, but at a very high level, it says, hey, you've completed a large body of work, blah, blah, blah. It says, hey, create a review workspace in the repository. It tells you what to do, how to set it up. It says, hey, treat the document as a living document. And that is important because what you're going to do is that when you're reviewing the code, you're going to do it iteratively. You're going to do one iteration, give the AI your feedback. It's going to give you answers. You're going to study the responses. Then you're going to give it another set of questions. It's going to give you responses. And what it's going to do, instead of creating separate documents, it's going to actually take the same living document. There's going to be one living document per epic, per arc, right? And every arc, every epic has all the features that were built in that epic. And an epic for me then, one arc corresponds to a single branch. So it's just basically another way of saying this is going to look at all the features created on that branch. And it's going to basically go like, let's just go through this iteratively until we get to a point where there's zero change, right? Meaning that there's zero questions that I have at the end of it, right? And then what it does is as it's doing this, it keeps up a living doc. So living doc, initial pass, review loop, and then there's some really good standard rules. So every time I have a runnable test with every explanation. If I ask you for something, before you answer me, you need to have a runnable test so that when you give me the explanation, I can go run it myself. So I'm not taking your word. Again, don't trust the AI. Um, every diagram gets a narration. So, and I have this available too on the Idea and Innovation Factory membership area, and that's free too as well. There's a skill in there called an architectural diagram skill, and what it does, it draws beautiful architectural diagrams. You'll be able to see them as I kind of go through. And so every time there's something that's a little bit complex, I will ask it to do an architectural diagram because, as you know, vision, right? Visually looking at something is like a thousand words, right? Plus, I have ADHD, so sometimes I just get like super bored. like I'll be reading this and I'll be like, yeah. Come on, man. I'm like, show me a diagram, and I'll look at the diagram. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. I see what you're saying, and then I'll go back. Okay, no, I have questions, right? So again, man, one of the best things that you can do is just physician, know thyself, right? As I said, I have ADHD. For me, and again, as you can tell, there's a lot that I do. Sometimes my ADHD cap just kind of goes like, oh yeah, that this is boring, right? Especially if it's something that I think I understand, but there's nuance in there. So my brain discipline doesn't look for the nuance. So anytime I kind of sense that coming, I go like, hey, draw me a diagram. Because I know looking at the diagram excites my brain, right? And then for others who don't have ADHD or don't have that problem, we all know this as humans, looking at something is like is what I think they say like what 100 times better, or something like or communicates 100 times more information. So diagrams are one of my favorites. I have a skill for that, and I draw some really beautiful diagrams that you'll see pretty soon. But the other thing about the diagrams too as well is that whenever you do these diagrams, and most of them are like flow diagrams, like they show you how information travels along the system and all that stuff. Sometimes it can get a little bit convoluted. So I have a rule in here that says every diagram gets a narration. So it'll give you a story, right? So for example, in AI SDR, it'll basically be like, hey, Daniel sent an email. The email came in. The email was actually consumed, right? This agent looked at the email, blah, blah, blah. And it was going to give you a narration. You're like, okay, cool, I get that. It's like almost having an expert sitting here talking to you about a system design. The other thing is that every answer links to code. So if I ask, I'm doing reviews, I'm asking questions. Hey, what about this? What about this? Did you forget this? Right? How did you implement this? Why did you make that decision? Whenever that happens, every answer links to code. And this is the super important part. So then I can just click on the link. It takes me directly to the code. I can look at the code, can review it pretty quickly, right? So it means, let's understand what that means. Remember I said you're not reviewing every line of code? But if I have a question about something, it means that that code is maybe the most important part of the code base. So I'm looking at the most important part of the code base. And just from that, I can get insights. I can see things like, oh, if you did that, that means that you maybe did this the wrong way. And then I can ask more questions, right? But if you kind of did this complicated part correctly, right? And that complicated part is tied to other side parts of the system. I go like, oh, I have faith that you did this correctly. But remember, I go back to number one. I have runnable tests. So if you pass the runnable test, the code looks brilliant from what I'm looking at. I have high confidence that we're good, right? And I remember the tail end too. Before I launch this out publicly, I'm doing beta testing. I'm doing all kind of user testing and all that kind of stuff. So again, you're not cheating the process. You're working efficiently and you're working with a high level of confidence, right? And then the last one here, which is number 4, is that as you ask questions for the review, you're gonna show gaps. Like, hey, I don't like what you did here. Oh, hey, what about this? Sometimes the AI goes like, oh man, you just exposed the gap, right? And then what that does is that it then writes at the bottom of every one of the epic documents, it writes a gap analysis as to what needs to be done. And then there's a central file across all the arcs for the night that says here's all the things that still need to be that needs to be done based on the review. And guess what? I then take that, create stories from that for tonight, and then when I go to bed, that's what it works on. And then that just kind of happens in a loop until I build these gigantic systems that usually would take a team of 8 to build. Just one person and his dog. Well, not a dog, but one person and his agents, right? You know what I'm talking about. So, um, let's just kind of see this in play, right? Because I've been doing this. I was doing this before I went live. So actually no, I'm about to do Arc B. I actually just finished Arc A. I had like 7 arcs from last night run. Yeah, last night was a heavy session. Last night was crazy. Like, yeah, last night was like super crazy. Last night was super crazy. Like I really pushed the AI last night. As a matter of fact, the reason why I pushed the AI last night was was for a funny reason. Um, I'm using Fable 5, and you know, Fable 5 is supposed to kind of cut off on the 19th. So by the time that I went to bed, because I was busy yesterday, I moved into a new home. As a matter of fact, I'm in my kids' game room because my office is not set up yet. Um, when I went to bed, I didn't hear the news that Fable 5 was extended for like I think like Claude Max users. So I have the $200 Pro Max account. So no, I'm hearing that it's gonna stay in the account. It's gonna be up, I guess, up to 50%. You can go up to like 50% of your usage. And because I have tremendous token discipline, right? So for me, that's gonna be able to be used all the time. So for example, I'll show y'all. Chat, I'll show y'all. If you look at my account usage, yeah, you can see this, man. From what I told y'all that I'm doing, I'm at 35% weekly Fable. 35%. Right? So I'm not even close. I'm like 65%. This resets tonight. So I tried to exhaust it last night. And I got up to go like, oh no, they still keeping it. So I was super happy because Fable is the SH. Fable is crazy. Like Fable is so good. Like the process I just explained works really well with Opus 4.8, but Fable is like next level actually to kind of get my process done. So with that being said, I'm gonna most likely be blasting this again tonight. As a matter of fact, I think I have like 7 more hours until it resets, and I have like 65% more of my weekly Fable left. So I think what I'm gonna do is I'm going to do some of the stuff on this live. I'm gonna drop off. I'm gonna make sure I do all my epics and maybe try to get it done by 3:30 or 4 o'clock in time for the Argentina spin final, World Cup final, and then I'm just gonna put Fable to work, right? Like for the next 6 hours until it hits like 9 o'clock. I think 9 o'clock Eastern is when the week resets, if I remember correctly. So I might just try to get this done by 4 o'clock. All my 7, 8 arcs that I had last night, have it then run for 5 hours. 5 hours should be enough to kind of put the fixes for the arcs in. Then do another review at 9, maybe from like 9 to 11:30, and then fall into my normal schedule of having it code overnight, right? With the existing arc fixes and then new arcs that I'm going to actually deploy. Because again, I have to get the AI SDR deployed by Tuesday, right? For this client, and I'm close. So just kind of finalizing. So that's what the game plan is. So let me just kind of show you what that kind of looks like as we look at Arc B together. So here you go. So as you can see, blah blah blah. All right, so it says yes, Arc B is ready for your first pass. So let's open Arc B. Now remember the way I got Arc B is that all I did was the yes sir. That is live is recording. Yeah. I can see. Oh, you're looking at me on the live. Yeah. You crazy bird. All right, buddy. Let me get back to it. I love you. Hello. Bye. All right. My 5-year-old is checking my life. My 5-year-old is my social media manager. Like he's always on my accounts. He checks to see what people are saying. He's 5. And then I have a 9-year-old who's like his manager who makes sure that he checks those. Like I got 2 boys. Like it's fun, man. So he just kind of walked in there because I guess he saw me on the live. He was like, "Hey, Daddy, you're live," and I didn't tell him that I was going live. It's some good stuff. Anyways, let me get back to it. Yeah, yeah. Hey, man, I can't complain, man. Life is good. Like being able to work from home, AI. I mean, AI is such a plus, man. Like AI is a plus. Like it has changed my life in terms of the amount of time I can spend with my boys, I can spend with my wife, because I can get so much stuff done, right? And I can go to bed at 9 o'clock. I can go, I can go tuck my kids in. I can go hang out with my wife at 9. And while I'm doing this, I have like 15 agents running across 3, 4 projects, right? Like used right, AI is a life changing, right? I don't make anybody tell you otherwise, but it's used right, right? So with that being said, let's kind of jump in. So again, as I said, I use this right against the work from the night before. It's the first thing that I paste in when I come into the morning because remember my agents are working here. I would come in, I just paste this. It would then actually create the different arcs, the different arc overviews for me, right? And then I just kind of go down arc. I just go arc by arc. So now I go into this arc and then I just kind of go and I could check it out. And then man, it's not rocket science at this point. So I'm not going to show you what it looks like. So at the at the top, it gives me a change log. It says, hey, this is pass one. It says here's some of the standing rules from the previous arc that we just reviewed, right? So again, see how this is learning? That's what it does. So if I do arc A, it takes stuff from arc A, it updates arc B, so then I'm never like doing things twice. So one of the things that I have in the rule, it shows me, and this is very specific to this project. The durable agent runtime has 4 levels, 4 arcs. So sorry, 4 tiers. So one of the things I always want to know is the feature for each feature in that arc. What tier does that feature live in? Does it live in I, does it live in my component library tier? Does it live in my platform tier? Does it live in the solutions tier? Does it live in the um, what's called the tenant, so like the tenant context, right? So there's 4 tiers. No, this will be different for everyone for their projects that they're doing, but you can edit the prompts slightly to be able to acknowledge that, or it should be able to do it on your for you automatically. So it's not a big deal. But for me, I want this. I want the tiers table right off the bat, so I can actually look at this, right? So I can see it's platform, component library, solution, and then the tenant pack. So you can see right off the bat, I'm looking at this. I come to review Arc 2, and I clearly see, like, look, man, none of these changes have to do with the really have to do with the tenant pack, right? Um, most all of them do have to all of them expect except the library packaging because there's 8 features that launched in this arc. 7 of them have to do with the actual underlying platform. 6 of them have to do with the component library, which is part of the platform. And yeah, 7 of them have to do with the solution. But I'm looking at it, just it's really small things like the paths, the roster query. There is a SDR registry fence. It looks more like a variable that has to be set. Deliverability is about delegations and the check message function. Connectors is just about how to consume the tools via a glue function that we have. And for library packaging is about pinner dependency. So pinner dependency is something like really super small. When it's in Python or it's in Node.js, pinner dependency is like a small thing. So I haven't read it yet, but I'm pretty sure what AI is going to say is that it says, hey, we need to pin the dependency in the solution so that updates right doesn't break it, because that's one of the things when you're doing this, when you're coding, right, be very careful with dependencies for 2 reasons. One, your testing is done on one particular version. Sometimes when that version updates, it can break, even if the publishers are supposed to do back compatibility test backward compatibility testing. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But understand they don't know your application, so they can't test everything. The other thing too is that in this age of AI, people are releasing packages and stuff like that that can hack your system. So if you're using a dependency that has been scanned, right? Security scan, and you've tested it, and then letting it such that your system downloads newer versions, that's dangerous. So I pin dependencies as much as possible. And I believe that's why this is done here, because remember I said earlier on that I have ADRs that drive certain like and best practices. One of my best practices is that I pin dependencies. I don't care what anybody says. Well, Chris, what happens with the new functionality? No, if my system is working right now and it's working well, I'm good. If a new version comes out, I'll read about it. And if I want it, I'll go update it myself. Like I don't need you updating, getting new, updating to new versions for me. But not with the security risks that are out there right now. I hope everybody kind of develops that posture around security, because it's a big deal. Like we've seen it, right? Like go read the news. Like you go read the news. Go listen to the news. How many of these recent hacks and vulnerabilities that are being out there, and they go like, why? Oh, dependencies, the dependency chain, right? Just be careful. So I'm coming here. This gives me a nice overview of what I'm about to run into. And as you can see, I got 8 features here. So let's start from the top. And I'll kind of show you how I work. Now, one quick thing, I have whisper flow. So usually I'm not typing. I'm going to type here because it's the first time I'm going live and I haven't tested whisper flow and being live at the same time. So who knows if I try to do it, what would happen right with the mic. So I'm not going to do it. But I'm telling you, I have whisper flow, as you can see. As you can see, I did it this morning. This was the first arc that I did. It's been a slow week for me because I've been off somewhat at my grandmom's funeral, and plus I've been moving to a new house. So I haven't done much this week. But you can see today what I did. I'm just talking. See, this is my review. I'm just talking. So if you don't have Whisper Flow, get it. I'm not paid by Whisper. They do not know who I am. I'm just saying that if you're going to be doing stuff like this, get something like Whisper Flow, right? Shout out to my boy Brian, who's been actually Brian Alvarez Bailey, who's been actually after me to get Whisper Flow for a very, very long time, and I did not. And I recently got like about a month ago. It is life changing, especially if you're doing the level of work that I'm doing, right? The amount of work that I'm doing. So let's just kind of jump in. So what I want to do here is I'm just going to take now. I'm just going to go for the review. Now, see how the review is set up. Again, this is so important. And if you use the prompt that that I'm giving you access to, you'll get the same thing. It says, what is this feature about? Why is this feature important? Yes, the code that's related to the feature, right? And yes, the test. See how easy that is? But what? Why? Code, test. And he says, review thread, waiting your first questions. Review thread, waiting your first questions. Review thread, waiting your first questions, because it knows I haven't asked questions. So this is going to jump in. So the first one says the runtime now tracks per invocation whether the handler produced an effect, right? So this is the liveness guard, right? So I'm just going to read some of these out. Why? The SDR's own wait with no schedule week bug is the class this kills. A lead that would sit silently forever now becomes a loud located failure. For a fleet of SDRs selling on the long running goals that never get stuck, this is the promise that was made mechanical. So basically, what this is here is that because the DAR is meant to work with long running multi agentic flows where someone can just define a goal, because that's what it's meant to do, there is a chance that something could get stuck. In other words, there is a chance that the agent, the solution that is built on the DR, could be done incorrectly. So therefore, this is just making it foolproof. That's all this is. And this is actually pretty awesome, right? Because understand how the DR works. It's a runtime. It has some of this stuff baked into it. But it also means someone coding on top of it could make a mistake or not understand it properly, and things like this could happen. So then what we're putting in here is a guard that says, hey, in case that happens, the agentic runtime itself can determine when something gets stuck. And when it gets stuck, it can help it, right? So the runtime will now track whether the handler produced an effect, right? So, for example, an effect is like to emit something or side effect that run. A side effect is a tool call. So, if an AI agent runs and it does what it's supposed to do, it's supposed to do a tool call. It can check to see if that created a side effect, which is AKA it was done. It registered a wake, right? So basically, when the handler for an agent gets executed, there's only a few things it can do. Think about it. If you have an agent, there's a few things the agent can do. The agent, let's say, wakes up, it says, "Oh, I'm supposed to do this," and if you give it a reason, if you give it like chain, if you give it chain of thought and the ability to make up its own mind and its own decisions, which by the way, that's what AI is supposed to do, right? Let me just go on a little tangent here. If you're building an AI SDR and you're telling it, hey, when this happens, do this. When this happens, do this. When this happens, do this. You don't have an AI SDR. You have a rule-based SDR. A true AI SDR says, give me all the information that you got. Information about the lead. Information that's happened historically, right? That's episodic memory. Tell me about what your company is about, right? Your offerings. Tell me about all the assets that I have and the creative assets and all that stuff. That's semantic. Tell me what I can and what I cannot do. Like, please do not send, please do not ask for a meeting on the first cold email. That's procedural. Sorry, that's policy memory. What can I, what can and what I cannot do. So you have episodic memory, you have procedural memory, you have semantic memory, and you have policy memory. So whenever an AI has all of that, it says it uses this reasoning ability, which is what it's supposed to do, and go like, hey, based on all that, I just got this new lead on this new lead. I have email available to me. I'm gonna write this email. Oh, but policy says no. I'm not gonna use that one. It says I'm gonna write an email. Email goes out. Person responds. Person is in San Francisco. Your company is in Tampa, right? Because I'm in the Tampa Bay area. Person responds at 7 at 4 p.m. Pacific. That is 7 p.m. Eastern. An AI, what an AI would do, like some of this AI SDRs on the systems that are not built properly, is gonna respond at 7:01 because you got the email at 7. It generates its stuff. It takes a minute. It responds at 7:01. Someone looks at that, they immediately go, "This is an AI response," right? Because remember, when you give something to an AI to do, there's only a few things it can do. It could act on it, or it could say, "I need to do this later," or "I need to do something later." And it's just like a human being, right? If I give you information, you're either going to act on it right now or say, hey, put it in your memory and go like, hey, I'll do something about this later. Same thing for an AI. So in this case, it's 7 p.m. Eastern. I do not want to send a reply. So what should happen is you need to register a wake up timer, put it on a queue and say, hey, at 8 a.m. tomorrow morning or 8 a.m. on the next workday, trigger a wake up that would trigger the agent to then send a reply. Right? So that's what this is here. So the runtime now tracks per invocation whether the handler produced an effect, which is to either emit a side effect. A side effect is a tool call. Like if a side effect of you give me information from to do something, right? That's a side effect. If you give me some information, and I say, oh, based on the information, I'm gonna do this. That is a side effect. And what I use to do that thing is a tool, right? So anytime you do a tool call, it could be like replying to an email via a tool. That is a side effect of the handler. But it can also register a wake, which is a timer to go like, oh, you gave me information. I know I should do something, but I cannot do it now. Or it might declare completion, like, oh, based on the information that you gave me, I have nothing else to do. My goal has been set. So none of the three equals a liveness violation, right? One plus counted by default, dead letter under blah blah blah. So one sharpening beyond the ADR's letter. So you see what it says? It says, hey, all this was great underneath the ADR, But I realized that there's one thing that needs to be sharpened. A memorized side effect read doesn't count as progress. So a stuck redelivery still trips. It wasn't counting the side effect as progress. So if the side effect was to send a reply to the email, it wasn't counting as progress. So even if I redelivered, it still didn't see that as progress. Right? So basically, it did a liveness guard block in here, blah 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 blah, and then it says, "Hey, here's the test. If you wanted to test it yourself," which I'm not gonna do on this recording, but all I have to do is go into why be lazy, Chris? Let's do it. Let's do it. New terminal. New terminal. Let's do this thing. So it says go to here, packages, CD, SDK. Right, so it says in here, and it says, hey, run this test. So I'm going to prove that I did it. So it's running the test. Yep, and it says 4 pass. Now, what I will say is that there's a version of this test that actually shows me the JSON that comes out of it. So I won't run it here right now because there might be information that's a little bit sensitive in there that I don't want to show. But basically, and then that has nothing to do with the prompt for the review. That's how I write my test suites, right? But basically says, hey, yeah, I did this. I passed 4 tests in 1 second. And that's it. I go, okay, cool. So now I'm reading this, and what I'm asking myself is there anything that I don't understand? Is there any questions that I do want to ask? Right. The good news is I kind of understand everything in here, but just to kind of show what the process looks like, I'm gonna do this. So I just give myself a little header, and I'm like, hey, explain this in more detail. Which one? Boom. Right? No, this is supposed to be hyperlink, but you know AI goes. Sometimes it doesn't know what you want it to do. Um, but the good news is that I'm in the repo, so I can check it out myself. So it's in packages. Right, so it's in packages, SDK Python. Yep, and if you're wondering, like Chris, SDK, yes, the entire durable agent runtime is an SDK that is published. And what happens is that you just take that and you include it in your project. Like any solution that you're building, like the AI SDR has the SDK, right? It's using the SDK. That's how beautiful this is. Yeah, so all you have to do to use the durable agent runtime is that you will get the instructions to set up the Docker containers. Boom, it's easy. And then once you do that, you take the SDK, bring it into your project, and then you have the durable agentic runtime with all the value that I've been talking about, plus more. There's like over 80 features of the DAR that solves pretty much all the problems that you hear about in agentic in multi-agentic systems, orchestration, um, risk conditions, idempotency of concurrent calls and consecutive calls. All that is solved by the DR. I am super excited about this. I most likely want to launch this publicly for another 3 months because I'm going to use it on my AI SDRs and other clients' AI SDRs as the first solutions built on it. And then I have a few other solutions that I'm building over the next 3 months. But once they've been running and they're working perfectly, I'm going to release it. I don't know if I'm going to release the durable agentic runtime as something open source yet, or it might form the basis for a marketplace I'm going to launch. I haven't decided yet. I have some trusted advisors that I'm still working with. But if you're watching this live or you're seeing this video after and you want to give me some feedback as to what you believe, trust me, right? I am in this for everyone. If you have some input on this, please let me know. That will be considered too as well. Yep, so here's the runtime. Here's the runtime code. All right, so again, I'll come here and tell me, hey, code, blah, blah, blah. The liveness guard is in process envelope. Again, that's why I like it to be linked, because I can just get there directly. But you can see here, right? Process envelope, worker, envelope, store, backbone, max iterations, right? All this is written from set variables and all that stuff, policy, metrics, model, tools, peers. So this is pretty cool. Again, this is not a super deep video on the durable agent runtime, but again, I'm super geeked about this. So it's hard not to explain a little bit, but basically all this is basically saying is that, hey, the tools are coming from a tools executed, the model goes through the model gateway. And that's the most I'll say about this, because this is the part that's super cool. Everything here is abstracted. So basically the agents don't even need to know what models that they're using. It's in the configuration of every agent that is spawned on the durable agentic runtime. And there's an abstraction layer, which means that behind the scenes, when the configuration, you can change what models you use. But what it also means that you can actually A/B test agents. So if I have either AI SDRs, I can have one agent that is using Opus 4.8, and then an agent that's using Quinn, because actually I'm doing that right now. And then I can actually just track what's the difference between leads closed or emails responded to, and the SDK already has that built in, right? There's A/B endpoints that will actually grab information that's in there. So as you can see, code is really nicely documented, because that's part of my coding standard. Yep, that's so one of the things I was looking for is whether it did it for both local and AWS, and it's right there. It says, hey, for AWS it's SQS, for local it's NATS. All right, that's what I'm using in the local infra. It's referencing all the ADRs that it took into play. Yep, it's taking care of the human in the loop resume using my correlation ID. Yep, here's the liveness guard. A non-terminal invocation must have produced a side effect, right? Effect registered a weak source or declared a completion. None of the three equals a silently stuck session. Make it loud. That's what it is. I love this, right? So it's basically saying like, look, man, if something happened and it doesn't get you to the goal, it's not calling a tool or it's not registering something so you can wake up in the future to do something, we are gonna consider that you got stuck. And if it's got stuck, we want to make it very loud that it is stuck. So based on that, I do have a question actually. B, looking at the runtime code, explain what it means to make it loud. Is that logs, or is that something emitted to, let's say, our operator cockpit, or communicated in some other highly visible format? Also, is that something that can be accessed via the SDK, which I think it would be if it is surfaced in, let's say, the Tory app. Now, if you recognize something from my comments here, right? This is not the comments of someone that doesn't know what their code is doing. And you know how I know what my code is doing? Because I did this process over and over again. I know exactly how to speak to the AI because I'm using the same language it does. There's going to be no zero, 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 zero confusion because I'm using the exact terms it's using because I do this every day, which means, get my first going dry. Hey, oh man, look at my kids. My kids have sent me a message saying, "Love you, Dad." That must be my 9-year-old. And what's that? Eden? Eden, you say if you share something you've been building, need some feedback. Hey man, for sure. How do you want to share that? You can message me. I'm always willing to take a look at someone's stuff, right? I love builders. Like I love people who are building stuff. So yeah, ping me, send me a message, and we can connect, man. We can do a one-on-one. I'll look at it. I'll look at it. I'll give you my honest feedback. That sounds good. I don't mind doing that. I need to figure out how I can actually type in the chat. I am. I feel like so backward right now. I need to figure out this chat thing. If anybody knows how to do that, please let me know. I'm using OBS to actually do streaming. So I'm looking at the OBS screen right now. I'm like, oh, do I do a chat? Yeah, but Eden, yeah, Eden, if you see this, just ping me. Oh, I just saw it. I just saw to do it. Okay, cool. I saw to do it. Learning on the fly. All right, let's get back on track. So basically, no, I've kind of looked at this. I'm good. So now I'm moving on to the next one, which is going to be the explicit session completion. So again, I just like the nice little headers. The headers are not for the AI, it's for me, right? Next one is done. Done is now first class, idempotent signal, the handler declares. The runtime cannot infer domain terminal state. So completion is how a finished session is distinguished from a zombie. The SDR terminals path, done, and the library workers unknown event, no ops still declare. Why? So the goal life cycles now become legible, right? So remember what I'm saying here, right? So an agent sitting on the durable agentic runtime, right, has domain knowledge of its space. So in this case, I'm doing an AI SDR. If that's the case, the durable agent runtime has no idea of the domain. Remember, you have to have that separation of concerns, right? Because the durable agentic runtime is supposed to work for any multi-agentic system that's event driven. So it cannot have domain knowledge. So it means that it doesn't necessarily know what done is, right? Remember these are built for goal oriented agents, right? So how it works is that you build an agent, you set a goal. You see, so in this case for the AI SDR, it is to book for someone to book a meeting. It says here's a lead. I don't care what you do. Here's the tools. Here's everything you know about the company. Here's the assets you have, like PDF files, slide decks. There's even tools, and I haven't built this one yet, but there's even tools to create video sales letters, right? Using HeyGen. There are tools to create customized landing pages where the AI can do research about a company, then write a customized landing page. There's even tools that connect to Cloudflare so that when you create those pages, it pushes it to Cloudflare on the branded domain, and it can go in an email to go like, yeah, I put together this for you. The AI SDRs have access to all of this. And it's the AI SDR that uses its reasoning to go like, what am I going to do? I just got a response from this person. What are they asking for? Oh, they go like, hey, can you tell me how you would help me? I go like, yeah, sure. The AI SDR goes like, oh, okay, cool. I have access to the um the personalized landing page tool. I have access to the research tool. I have access to the whole email thread that we have. I am going to put together a personalized landing page with how I would help you. And I'm going to push it up to Cloudflare. So you go like, oh my gosh, I'm really talking to a person. The AI SDR can do all that in my system. So it'll do whatever it has to do to get to the goal of getting the person to book that meeting on that link. And by the way, the AI SDR also knows when you've booked the meeting because I'm using TidyCal. My client I'm going to launch this for uses Calendly, so we're using webhooks, right, and polling. So polling for TidyCal, Calendly has webhooks, so we know when a meeting is booked. So at that point, when that meeting is booked, the system will emit a done because it knows what, right? The solution knows what the end game is. So when it does that, it now creates an explicit session completion. And this is about. So that was that feature saying that, hey, the durable agent runtime does not know what done means, but it has to be told when something is done. So that's what it is. So go life cycle becomes legible. Still working, right? This is done. This is a violation, which is exactly what the cockpit's Flipboard and liveness alerts will render. So basically, the cockpit is a Tory app that I'm building that you would hand to someone and they can manage their fleet of agents. That's the cool thing because since everything is an SDK, it means that developers who have access to durable agentic runtime can actually build whatever that they want on top of it. And one of the things I'm building for the AI SDR is a sales cockpit that shows you what all your agents are doing. Um, it will surface whenever your agents need permission for something, like an email that they want to send an email, they want you to review. All that kind of stuff is in there. So now it says, like, do you want to test this out? And I go like, yeah, let me test this out. There you go, 4 passed. All right. All right, so then we go out to number 3. I do have any questions for number 2. I think we're good. As a matter of fact, let me just kind of check out. Oh, I see what the AI is doing. It's only showing me links if the code is in a different code base, right? So I maybe have to update that because I'm kind of lazy when it comes to this stuff. Like I'm like, I don't want to find, I want to click. So basically, it says like, look, it says this is why I did the work. There you go. Return done. State meeting booked. Goal met. Meeting booked for blah 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 blah. It's gonna emit that message back to the durable agent runtime, and it basically goes like, "Yep, I'm done because event type equals meeting booked." But this is brilliant, right? So this is working out just fine. Um, so I don't really have any questions from the AI for number 2. Tell the truth. But sometimes I kind of like whenever I have questions, I don't have questions. It concerns me, so I kind of look deeper. Yeah, I don't, man. This is actually really good. This is actually done really, really well. It followed my ADRs to perfection. Okay, so let's look at number 3. Actually, now I'm just going to do this here. Explain more the role of CTX completed. Just so I can have something here, just so I can show. So I go into number 3, capability registry. So a registry port with memory and Postgres realizations. I love how AI speaks. A registry port with memory and Postgres realizations. Like, what the heck does that mean? Like, I mean, I know what it means, but like, why do you have to say it like that? Like, dang. Like AI sometimes speaks like that dude though, that woman that you meet at a party and they just like all stuff. You like, I went to Harvard. Sorry, if you're watching this and you've went to Harvard, I don't mean to to be a jerk, but you know what I'm saying. Uh, well, let's look at it. Let's check this out. So this is the registry. So a registry port with memory and Postgres realizations. It just basically means that hey, this is a memory. This is a registry port that it works with memory and it works with Postgres, right? What's important here for you to remember or to know is that memory in the durable agent runtime is it depends on the type of memory I'm talking about. So I think this is maybe episodic memory. So I'm actually going to ask it for a clarity here just to make sure it's doing the right thing. So I'll be like, explain this in more detail. Some questions. Give me a second. I'll be done in like 50 minutes. Some questions. Um, what type of memory? Episodic. And follow on. What where is what so sorry define explain the memory store, logs, queue in memory, etc. So it says this is a registry port of memory and Postgres realization. So it's just connected to memory. I'm assuming it's episodic memory because that would make a lot of sense because my ADR speaks about using episodic memory. Episodic memory is in the form of a log. And what it looks like is that when you're talking to a lead, right, the log keeps on growing. So it's every thread. Now, I say lead, but remember the durable agent runtime doesn't know that it's a lead. It doesn't care. It just knows that that's a thing that you're trying to get to a goal. So from an abstraction standpoint, is what the log has is every time you have updated information on an entity, it kind of like gross that out, right? And Postgres realizations mean that there's information in Postgres, right? So Postgres, hmm, that actually brings up a very interesting question. Another question here is is a wrong dimension of Postgres. Is that the solution, Postgres, or the DAR Postgres? And if it is DAR, doesn't DAR Cloud use something else than Postgres? And I like to play coy and stupid with AI because what you realize sometimes that if you tell it too much, it's gonna agree with you sometimes and take you down the wrong angle. I wanted to have a open conversation with me. I kind of know the answer to the last part, which is doesn't the dark cloud use something else than Postgres? It's not Postgres. We use Dynamo because the entire cloud infrastructure for DAR is serverless. So it actually uses Dynamo serverless on AWS. So I know that answer. But I do not want to tell it I know that answer because I do not want it to focus in on that. I want to kind of give me like a more general answer. All right. So basically, it says that a registry port of memory and Postgres realizations announce, which is a function, upserts by scope name. So upserts means that it is going to insert, but if information is already in there, it's going to update. That's what an upsert is. Here's the thing. I'm going to go back to something I said earlier on. Understanding patterns, right? You don't have to be a database expert, but you should know what an upsert means, right? That's this kind of stuff I'm talking about. Because if I didn't know what an upsert means, that would have been a problem. See, because the word upsert here is very important. It says the announce function upserts by scope and name. So what it says here is that when announce is called, if there is nothing in there, so for example, if I'm dealing with a lead, if there's nothing in there, right, and it finds out if there's anything in there by the scope and the name, that's gonna be the unique key. If it doesn't have anything, it's going to insert it. But if it has something, it's going to update it. That's what the upsert means. And it is going to publish a capability registered event. Ooh, ooh, ooh. That is beautiful. Let's finish this. I'm going to tell you why this is important. Lazy pool plus event on change, no polling heartbeat. Visibility is scope bounded. Attendances deployment wide records plus its own. Never siblings. Serves verb answers does anything here serve this. Why? This is what's important. The fleet stops being wired by convention. What capabilities exist become a queryable fact. This is also the discovery half of the marketplace. The same registry of future consumer shops. Let me explain what that means. One of the ADRs that I have, right, dictated a simple question. How does a agent utilizing the durable agent runtime, how does it know of a new capability, aka tool that becomes available on the network? Remember what I said in the beginning? The beauty of DAR is that your friend Greg, your friend Greg, could be running DAR on his machine. Let's say he has a killer machine, mad GPUs. He can do transcription, he can do rendering, and he goes like, "Hey, Chris, you can send a couple files to to my machine, and I'll do some transcription for you, or I will render some video for you." Then all of a sudden, he adds a new capability, and then a new capability. Does he have to tell you every time that he had a new capability in his machine once he's giving you access? No. Your agents on your durable agent runtime network says, "Oh, Greg just added this new capability. I know I have access to it." And all it needs to do now is for you to approve it. Be like, "Hey, I approve you to use that tool from Gary." So before, oh, sorry, with doubt number three here, it would have to be a pool. Like my agent, my durable agent runtime running on my machines would have to constantly ping Gary. You say, "Well, that's not a big problem, Chris." But what about when you ask, sorry, Greg? What about when you add Greg, Lizzie, Thomas, Jane, Anessa, Dagmar, and all of a sudden you have 50 people? You're going to be pulling all that? Nope. It is supposed to, when a new capability comes online, it broadcasts that it's actually available. And then the person who owns that capability can control the scope as to where it can be broadcast. At least I hope that part, which is why I'm going to add this. Does the owner of that capability, i.e., sorry, and tell the truth, I don't think AI did this. So there's going to be a real gap. All right, and now we can actually go in here. We can actually test it. So it's actually registering something. So it skipped one. Remember we talked about the upsert? So it's basically saying, "Hey, there was a tool in there already that I skipped, and four of them were added." Now I can actually go into my Docker. I can actually do this, but that actually requires me actually switching my screen here and all that stuff. But just understand, I'm using Docker. I can go into Docker Interactive, and I can actually run this query in the Postgres container, run it within Docker. And if I run this command, select scope, name agent from capability register, I will actually have 5 capabilities registered. That is beautiful. All right, so that's gonna wind it up because my wife is already giving me the eye. and this has gone longer than I wanted it to, but I'm having fun doing this. And again, this is stuff that I do all the time. So again, a session like this might last around 2 hours, right? So I usually do this faster, obviously, if I'm not doing a stream, but for 2 hours, usually can take in 2 hours I can do one project, right? So usually I'm doing about 3 to 4 story acts per project. So if I'm running 3 projects for the day, anywhere between 4 to 5 hours, I'm doing these reviews. And so if I get up at like 4:30, usually 10 o'clock, I'm done with my reviews. And then I'm off to, doing consulting, right? Running AI teams, meetings, working on content. I mean, that's kind of like what my day looks like, right? So my day looks like I get up at like, if I get up at like 4:35, you know, 4:30, I'll pray, you know, take some time to start the day. 5 o'clock, if I'm starting next 4 to 5 hours, I'm doing reviews like that across like 2 or 3 projects. It all depends on how much I have going on. 10 o'clock, I'm done. And at the 10 o'clock point in time, I'm actually working with my clients that I consult or contract with. Right. So I have clients that I'm like an AI product manager for, other clients I'm like a, chief AI officer. I'm jumping into meetings, right? I am designing out systems. I'm meeting with product teams. I'm meeting with C-level teams, running direction, strategy stuff. So between like 10 to 5, call it that, I'm doing that. And in between there, I'm doing social media stuff. I have a lot of content factory stuff, but I don't make AI just push out my stuff. Everything that I push out has at least my voice. Even when I do like AI driven video, like for my shorts and some of my other channels, I still do my voice. No, on this channel, I don't really do anything AI. I use AI to kind of help me do clips and stuff like that and titles. So it helps. But I do this, right? On this channel, I do this. This is my fun channel, right? I try to push out all the content myself, a little bit of planning, all raw, right? Just kind of see how I work every single day. So I really love working on this channel. So then by 5, I'm done. Then I go hang out with my kids, play Madden, play Roblox, play Fortnite. Take walks with my wife. Take my sons to soccer. Right, hang out. I do this like until like 9:30. Then I'll spin back, maybe do some coding for like an hour and a half, like around 12. Then let my agents run again, night time. Get up around 4:30 again and do it again. So again, not crazy. Like I know it sounds crazy to some people, but man, this is like if I could describe my life, before I had it, this is exactly what I would want. Get up early, 4:30, 5 o'clock, pray, you know, get my review my agent calls, work with some amazing clients from like 10 to 5, 7 hours, be active on social media around that time too as well. Um, Go hang out with my family for like 5 hours every day. I mean, not many people get to hang out with their kids, right? For like five, and their wives or their spouses or their husbands for 5 hours a day. I get to do that every day, right? And I get to do more on Saturday, I get to do more on Sunday. I am a big proponent of how AI can change your life if you just learn process, right? And just kind of stick to process. So, anyways, I'll get off my soapbox, but I just hope everybody would find the joy that I find by just being organized, right? And again, I'm not perfect. Like it's been a headache getting there. Like a lot of and get moments of just honesty, right? Just a lot of stress in getting to this point, a lot of frustration getting to this point, a lot of disappointment sometimes in myself, or like, man, Chris, you can do better. Not getting to this point, but now that I'm closer to my optimal self, because of organization, such a good feeling, man. It's just, it's such a good feeling. It's worth it. It's worth going through the headache of trying to optimize yourself, right? But it's not easy. I'm not the kind of person who's gonna be like, hey man, this is easy. It's not. None of this stuff is easy, man. Like none of this stuff is easy. Again, it's so important for me to say this. My grandmom just passed away, and look, I just believe in transparency. Hopefully, this someone's listening to this and it just makes sense to them. My grandma who raised me just passed away, and certain things just are more important. It's important to accomplish stuff in life, and it's important to be there with family. It's important to give back. It's important to mentor. It's important to make people's lives better. It's also important to make a crap ton of money. Like all those things are important. It's important to take care of yourself. And I believe AI allows us a unique ability to do that. Just a unique ability to do that. But anyways, I think my camera maybe died. So I'm maybe about to call it. Um, but no, I don't think it died. I just think it went off. And as I said, not an expert at this streaming thing, but I will get there. As in anything else that I do, as in anything else that I do, I always strive just to get better and better and better and better. And eventually we all get there. The goal should never be perfection at the beginning. The goal should always be like, where do I start? So how do I start? Anyways, so we just did this for free. Let's do this for 4. Mode B, runners self-announce. So what? Um, Agents run a serve, maps the agent's manifest onto a register record, and announces before consuming. Oh, this is good. I remember this. So basically, what this is every agent has a manifest, right? So whenever you have a system that needs to have like self-discovery, whatever that needs to be self-discovered needs to provide enough information so the consuming services know how to connect to them. If that makes any sense. So, and then that's usually done in like what's called a manifest. So every agent has its own manifest, right? So what's happening here is that it maps the agent's manifest onto a register record and announces before consuming, right? So basically, it's basically like, hey, this is me. This is what you can do to connect. And an agent goes like, hey, this is me. I'm going to connect to you. And then they can look at each other's manifest record, manifest, and goes like, okay, right. And so all this says is that it's as it announces before. So why this happens is because I want zero conflict discovery, right? You start a connector, the deployment knows. And the deployment is just another word that is used for the solution. So the solution is built upon the runtime. So you say if you start a connector, the solution knows about it. So onboarding a tenant's hands inherits it for free. So let me explain what that means. Onboarding a tenant's hands are tools, right? So ears are what kind of listens to signal coming into a system, like a webhook and all that kind of stuff. Hands are things that do, like sending an email, right? I can send an email through the Smart Leads API. That's a hand. So what it basically says is if you want to add a new hand to a tenant, right? So a tenant means that in the AI SDR, that's a solution. But in the AI SDR, if I want to white label it, I can have different companies that use it. So it's saying very specifically onboarding a new user into an application sitting upon the DR now has zero config discovery because the solution itself already knows about that tool. So when the tenant comes to on board, it just inherits that knowledge, which is beautiful. So the example is given here is that I have a Notion agent. So, and I want you to look at this, what did I say this? This standard here. It says daragents.crm.notion, and that namespace actually means something, and like the way that we do this means something. So it says dar agents means that there are agents, they are durable agentic runtime agents, right? So you have the dar runtime, and then the dar runtime you have agents. Everything is an agent. Reasoning agents versus utility agents. Reasoning agents are where you have like IP. How do they reason? How do they do things? It's usually chain of thought and some other stuff, right? And then you have utility agents, which is agents that are really tied to nongs, which is a nong would be a CRM, right? Because we go like, hey, this is a CRM, and then within the nong there are verbs, tools, right, and families of tools. So underneath a CRM, a type of CRM is Notion, right? Another CRM could be HubSpot. So all this is basically saying as an example is like, hey, see for if you want to see this works, start any library agent standalone. This is an agent. The CRM Notion agent is an agent. It has capability. You can read from Notion, you can write to Notion. Underneath that, there are tools: read, write, delete, right? Then you run the SQL query, right? And the agent's capability will show up as rows. So all it basically says that if there is an agent, you register it. Then you run this query. This agent's capabilities is going to show up in the capability map for this particular tenant, which means now that that tenant now has access to those tools. Beautiful. Number 5, the register defense in the SDR's PEP. The authorization policy now denies an agent call, right? The call agent capability that is entitled but not announced in the registry, is what we're talking about. Because invoking it would park the session on a wait, nothing will ever answer. 37 cache roster, scope bounded, serve local announces the compose manifest at put. So the entitlement means, says you may use. The register says it exists here. We're requiring both. Right? So let's see what it looks like. So there's a link to this. Very small file. See tool manifest, blah blah blah, resources, mailboxes. It's weird that this only has the mailbox resource, but that's maybe because it's not completed yet. All the tools are maybe not loaded yet. There's a safe recipients list. Okay, everything looks good. Oh, you can actually even irreversible entitlements. Okay, that looks good. So again, I can run a test right here. But all this is part of the SDK. You can see, right? All this is part of the SDK. It does have nonsense all the time. Oh. Oh, wait a minute. That's in the other project. I don't really want to go over there. But let me check something. Python yeah. So it's not there. It's in the other project. I'm not doing that right now. So I'm gonna do this. I want more information. Explain in more detail the difference between entitlement and registry. Explain who is responsible for what and the process. And this is what I want to show. Add a architectural document because I want to see that. Because that's what I want to see. Remember I said earlier on that I certain things like this, my brain goes like, I need to see this visually. So right, the deliverable article ships in the library, hosted only. All right, what? So I have a check.py. It is a lint call. See, yep, that was a conversation I had. So the lint is sellable know-how. Would somebody pay for this? And now it exists in exactly one place. So basically, I had a rule that says if there's anything that people would pay for that is know-how, it should exist in the central repository, which is the DAR agent repository, which is what you see here. Okay. And nothing really to see here. I know this is kind of straightforward. Now, I already tell her that I didn't like this. And it already contacted me and told me, like, no, man, this is okay. And here's why. And I ultimately went back and be like, okay, that's fine. But just for this, I'll kind of do it again. And I'll say this. I'll be like, hey, I know we kind of talked about this already, but I am looking at like, because my question is, why do I have inline SQL and not like a stored procedure, right? That's my main question here. And then this is like, yeah, this is a rule. This is a test that I can actually run. So let's run this test. And here's what it does. So this test, what it does, it does linting. Like, so from a concept of linting is, does this pass? Like, does it pass our checks of what a good email is? And they're deterministic, right? So basically it says like, hey, here's the test. Send an email that says, hi, we cut costs by 40%, act now risk-free, right? Now the claim corpus is that our brief mentions nothing. And if it comes down here and says, no, 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 this email would never go through. False, it would fail. Here's why. The violation. The spam triggers caught that you had the words act now and risk free. You had shouting exclamations. You had the can spam. You missed the can spam rules is of from that family found some violations, which is the missing opt out. Can spam another rule in the family is that you're missing a footer. And the other one is that there's a family that checks for unverifiable statistics. You have 40%, and that is not supported anywhere in the documentation for that particular tenant. So that email would never pass through. It would never be sent. So what does that do? Right? Is that this is basically email linting. Right? So if you coded before, you know you have in code you can lint, you can do linting for coding, right? To make sure that everything is sort of like right. Um, no, this is now linting for emails to be like, hey, are you passing all the rules of what the proper email could be, right? So sometimes you lint in code before you compile. This is basically the same thing. Before I compile the email, I'm going to lint the message to be like, hey, is this okay? And it will reject it. All right, we're nearly done. So 7, 3 more connectors: research, enrich, and publish. This is one of the ones that I really asked for. So we have a few more connectors. Research.firmographics now uses the Google Places API and the SIP API dossier. Enrich.apollo. I now have Apollo now as part of my enrich. And then publish. Remember I was saying this earlier in the stream, right, chat, that I have a publish now, which now uses Cloudflare. Dope. Like let's just understand what that means. Hey, thanks, Barca. Man, it's like what, 19 minutes before the big game, right? The game starts at 3:30, right? I think the game starts at 3:30. Let me check. Let me check. Let me check. I do not want to miss this. I do not want to miss the final. Oh my gosh, the game just started 5 minutes ago. Dang it! I gotta jump off this stream here pretty soon. I just gotta finish what I'm doing. That's it. My son didn't come get me. He has failed me. He has failed me. I bet he's watching the game without me. All right. So basically, business basically says that, look, we give you 3 more connectors. Um, you know what you asked for, and I was gonna do something just to make sure that it kept its shape, because I know it's calling it connectors. I hate when it changes language on me. You said connectors. These are tools, right? And more specifically, these are utility agents which follow/fall in line with the whole policy plus resource agent framework. Please confirm it. Because again, um, agents are not allowed to directly connect to tools. So if I have an Apollo tool, the Apollo tool cannot connect directly to the Apollo API. The Apollo tool actually says I have access to the Apollo API, which then it goes to a policy agent and says, can I get a short-term token so I can send or I can query Apollo, right? The policy agent goes, hey, because the policy agent is deterministic. It is not any LLM. It goes like, let me check your access. Hey, by the way, why do you need to access Apollo? Oh, you need to access Apollo because you need to enrich this lead, um, John Doe. Let me see if you are actually the owner of the John Doe lead. Oh, you are. Okay. Here's a short-term token. It takes the short-term token, then it speaks to the resource agent. It says, hey, resource agent, I have a short-term token, and the policy agent has told me that have given me permission to access the resource that is Apollo send. Oh, sorry, Apollo enrich. The resource agent checks it. It calls back to the policy agent. It goes like, hey, I got this agent that says it can actually enrich this lead. It says that you gave him a short-term token. Can you validate that? The policy agent goes like, yep, yeah, he's good. He's not a bad guy. Go ahead. He's okay. The research agent goes like, all right, dude, go ahead and run your enrichment. As soon as the enrichment is done, the the short-term token is invalidated. Cannot use it again. So I want to make sure. Note, I also want to ensure that if this is followed, that the short-term token used to access the underlying resource is also invalidated after the single use and not just on time. Now here's the thing. Now I know that short-term tokens by design cannot do that on their own, so we may have to introduce a blacklist. Make sense? Be sure to tell me if I am wrong and not just agree. All right. So last one, chat. Number 8. The library comes with an installable product. Dart agents get their own test suite. So somebody can actually pip install my Dart agents. So basically we can continue creating agents like Apollo connection, email connections, smart leads connections. All those things can be created by the community if I go open source, or by my company if we just keep it closed, but they can still be installed by a simple pip install. So now I have a simple question. How does this work if the Dart agents are ones we need to come on to? Right, team? And that's it. So once I do that, I hit enter. And then what's going to happen here is that, again, remember, I'm working off that prompt, right? You're working off that prompt. I dropped the link in the chat. Maybe can I pin it? Yep, I can pin it. So I pinned it. You can get the link in the chat. Oh, my camera finally went off because I'm using my phone. Again, not an expert at this streaming thing, but again, it is better to do and get things going than to get them perfect. The number one thing that prevents us from moving forward in life is the friction of starting. And we usually wait for perfection to start. So I don't have the perfect camera. I had my phone. It just died. I was on here longer than I planned. I will plan better next time. So, but you can still hear me. You can see me. You can still hear me. You can still see my screen. And that's all that matters. Because I'm not important. My face is not important. Hopefully the knowledge that I'm spitting here is what is important, right? And see the AI comes back, it says strong set. Several meet me in the code before answering. So what it's going to do, it's going to review the code here. And my camera is connected though for USB to my machine. So it should have been charging, but for some reason it's not. I think it's draining faster than it can charge. So what I'll know next time is I have to ensure that I'm on 100%, and I should maybe keep my streams to about um, just about 2 hours, because I think it just died around the 2 hour mark. So lesson learned. Lesson learned. But again, I just want to see have you all see what the updated living document is gonna look like. And then we'll be done with this session. Uh let's see what is the score right now. Let's see what this is. Coming, I'm signing off. I'm actually gonna come over and watch the game. Camera's on. There's somebody there? I am streaming live. Yes. My wife was walking into the office. My camera is off, but I want to be very um, protective of her. She doesn't like to be on camera, so just in case, um, I'll explain to her after the camera was off, but just in case I told it was on. All right, so give it a few minutes, maybe like a couple minutes, and we should be good. It's 0-0. I haven't missed any goals yet. Come on, no goal until I'm ready. There we go. It's actually not completed all the files. All the one file. So what it's doing is going to update the overview document with the responses and the clarity. And it's going to actually start creating a roadmap. Well, I should say a backlog of work that needs to be done, of stuff that I exposed. So you see, it's already started. Boom. See, it goes, hey, question, pass one. A, explain this in more detail. Boom. See, that goes, hey, question, pass one. B, what does make it loud mean? It answers me. All right. There's one where I asked it to draw me a diagram, so I want to show you that. There you go. I said draw me the diagram because I want to get a better understanding of how the registry fence is working. So it drew me the diagram. It's right here. So I can just right click and I can say open an integrated browser. And look at this. Here's the diagram. See? Here's the diagram. And then I said before that it does a narration with a story. See? SDR decides to send an email and calls call agent. See that? Before anything leaves the session, the PEP rules on it. See? The PEP is right here. Right? It's an authorization policy. Questions. May it. Entitlement. Question. Does it exist? Registry. See that? No. Denied loudly. Yes. Mailbox agent. Right? And it kind of tells you what the entitlements are, the registry facts, the PEP enforcement. It tells you about them. So again, if you had any questions about it, you just come right. You watch this diagram. You get a story. You get a diagram. You get definitions all in one. So again, remember the point I was making earlier at the beginning of the stream was, as you work building more elaborate systems with AI agentic coding tools, this is what you have to do, right? You have to spend some time reviewing the code that was written so you know your platform, you know exactly what was done, you know exactly if it's following your plan. I talked about using ADRs right in the beginning and using specification files and writing stories. That is my process. I start with ADRs, then I write so loosely. I have a little bit more things that I do, and I'll talk about them in different streams. But high level, if you're doing this, you're like 80% to where I'm at. You're writing ADRs, From the ADRs, you're writing specification documents. From the specification documents, you're writing out stories, right? In a PRD, right? In a product requirement document. And when you write those PRDs, write technical PRDs, right? So they have enough detail. And those technical PRDs are based off your specification files and your ADRs. And then once you have that, you then give them to your AI overnight, right? You go like, hey, for the next 4 or 5 hours, you're going to implement this. And then in your PRDs, when you write your stories, ensure you have acceptance criteria. Ensure your acceptance criteria has test, right? Make sure that the AI is writing tests, right, and performing the test. Make sure that your instructions are such that the agents that are writing the code are not the ones writing the test, and the ones that are writing the test are not the ones performing the test. That's three different sub agents, and you're doing all of these, and you're letting that run overnight. And when you come in the next morning, your job is to use the prompt that you just saw me did. I pinned the link to my membership area on ID Innovation Factory, where I am the I'm the lead architect and co-founder. Where you'll find, if you register on here, it's free. You'll find the prompt that I use to run the session that I just ran. And your job is to sit here and just go diligently through the results of that prompt and just iterate on what the AI is telling you, view important parts of the code. And if you do that, you're going to be able to explain your code and your platform to anyone. And that's even if you're not technical. And as always, if you really want to be great at this, you don't have to learn how to code. You don't have to learn how to write SQL queries. What you do, you don't need to be an expert AWS or DevOps person. What you do need to get really good at is understanding frameworks, system design, core concepts in every one of those places so you can have conversations with the AI and you can know when it's leading you down the wrong line. So with that, I'm going to jump up this stream. Sorry for the camera being off, but I'll say it again. It is better to move and to do something. This is my first stream than to try to get it perfect, right? Because the number one thing that prevents us from moving forward in this world is the friction of starting, right? So if you love this stream, follow me for the next one. If you have any questions, reach out to me, and I hope you subscribe to this channel, and hopefully I've been able to be some value to you today. And with that, I'm out.